The Rant Network with Stuart Brisgell and David Solomon. Every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, noon Eastern. You think about it, we rant about it. Listen to us live on Facebook.
Well, listen to us live on Facebook or YouTube or Apple Music or Amazon Podcasts. You can find us now on Spotify,
everywhere, Player FM, TuneIn Radio. We're now everywhere.
Everywhere. All right. So today's Friday, and it's called Free Flow Friday for a lot of good reasons. Number one, David and I don't start talking about what we're about to do. And so David has no clue what I'm about to say. And, he may not agree with me. And if he does, that's bonus. And if he doesn't, okay, I live. So during the week, we pick up these topics that are normally very hard hitting, and we normally try and stay a little ahead of the crazy news cycle. We are not editorials. We are not, we're giving you our opinions, and we really want to hear from you. I mean, lots of people have been messaging us privately, and we appreciate it. We know how scared they are of being singled out at the office place, and we get it. And so we're letting you know we're here. We see you're watching. We get the numbers. And so we want to tell you, we love you. Thank you for your support. Let me start. I guess all of this began with a dinner with my father and my wife, with my father's girlfriend, who's a lovely lady. And so it's not about her, but I figured I need to give some context on where it comes from. And so, as most of you know, I am not a progressive Democrat, and will probably never be confused as one either. But I'm a level-headed Republican. So I need to give some history, to give some context.
Do you understand that people will say that those words are a contradiction in terms? Not me, but there are people who are going to say that there's a contradiction in terms.
Yeah, I know. And there's also people that say the world is flat and they're still part of civilization. They're part of civilization. I'm not going to shame people here, but we're eating in my time, David. So let's get the facts. In 1829 was the establishment of the Democratic Party. About 30 years later, you had the establishment in 1854 of the Republican Party. You have everyone today trying to erase history, okay? And how am I going to prove this is, let's start. The party of the people is not the Democratic Party. And there are people running around out there calling Republicans racists, white supremacists, and that they're evil. And I think the root of evil begins from 1829. In 1857, there's a case called Dred Scott v. Sanford, where the Democrat justices, there were 9 justices, 7 were Democrat, 2 were Republican. 7 justices voted that slaves are property. So the root of slaves being property begins at the roots of the Democratic Party, okay? The commander-in-chief of the Civil War was Abraham Lincoln, who was basically the first president of the Republican Party, who but actually ended slavery, right? Murdered by Booth the next day by a Democrat, right? So Booth, who murdered Lincoln, was a Democrat. So let's talk about violence and racism. Let's start off with the guy that ended it got shot and killed by a Democrat. The next thing you got to know is that the vice president, because back in those days, you had a president that was Republican and a vice president that was Democrat, right? That's how they made a party and made a nation. Okay. So Andrew Johnson, a Democrat, was obsessed and always against the freedom of slavery, right? So the Democratic Party never defended slavery. They actually started the Civil War. They opposed Reconstruction. And the founder of the Ku Klux Klan, that's Nathan Bedford Forrest, was a Democrat, right? So the Republicans are being blamed for being Klansmen. The founder and the roots of the KKK is Nathan Bedford Forrest, who was a Democrat. So, and here's something else about, people in politics. The Republican Party had 22 black congressmen elected by the 1900. The Democrats didn't elect anyone of racial minority till 1935. The Democrats opposed the 13th Amendment, which was 1865, the abolishment of slavery. They were opposed to the 14th Amendment, which was 1866, which was citizenship for Black people. If you remember, we talked about our Jews white. Well, that goes back to the 1866 amendment that allowed Jews to be called white. But the Democrats were against it. The 15th Amendment, which was 1869, voting for rights for Blacks, they were against that as well. So again, where does this, animus come from? Where does this hatred come from this? So Woodrow Wilson, right, from 1912, 1920, played the first movie in the White House. The very first movie played in the White House by the Democrat Woodrow Wilson was a movie called The Birth of a Nation. That was AKA also known as The Klansman. Then you go to the Civil Rights Movement of 1964. In 1964, the Republican parties were 80% in favor of the Civil Rights Act, and less than 70% of the Democrats were. Democrats did a filibuster for 75 days to prevent the Civil Rights Act into an existence, right? And later, you have Lyndon Johnson, who was president from 63 to 69. You know what he said? He is famous for this comment. And again, I don't condone this language. Lyndon Johnson says, quote, "I'll have them niggers voting Democrats for 200 years. Okay. So where does racism, hatred, and the gross behavior stem from? The Democratic Party. And so why did I bring up the fact that I went out for dinner with my father's girlfriend, who, again, it's nothing to do with this part. But, when you're sitting at a table, you have these people with the visceral hatred towards the past president, Donald Trump. And I got to tell you, it is very misplaced. People are too absorbed in editorial and are refusing to look up history. And again, I burned my 7.5 minutes for David, but I'm going to steal a minute of his time and continue. Guys, I have never worn a mega hat. I've never shown up for a Trump rally, but I will tell you, the facts are the most important thing. And yes, I understand that someone saying facts don't matter in politics. I agree, but visceral lying does. And if we, the people, fall prey and victim to their mischievous and falsehoods, then we will be responsible for the failure of the greatest nation on earth. I thank everyone for their time. David, it's all yours.
Well, Stuart, it's actually kind of funny because you didn't know where I was going today, and I want to take a page out of your book.
Oh, wow.
I want to pick on a personality.
Oh, not me, I hope.
No. It's one of your dear friends, Representative Ilhan Omar.
Oh,
ladies and gentlemen, I want to tell you something. This person should have been the American dream. She's the poster lady for the American dream. She came from Somalia, the first American-born Muslim to be elected to Congress. Her and Representative Rashida Tlaib are the first two. In any other type of time frame, this would be celebrated as monumental. Okay? The same way Kennedy being the first Catholic was a president was celebrated, and I put that in quotation marks. Back then, it was like a whole big deal. This should have been a big deal. And 4 years ago, people made a sort of a deal about it. But to Stuart's point, and again, not knowing that Stuart was going down that road, the problem with the Democratic Party has been that in one hand, it wants to purport and promote the fact that they've got all these diverse individuals in place. But then what do they do with it? Well, Ms. Omar loves to talk about, how bad things are in the United States, how her life is terrible. I want to understand something. Had Ms. Omar or Mrs. Omar been in Somalia, would she have been a representative in power, or in any other or most other Muslim countries? No. Nope. Not in education. Nothing. I'm sorry. Women, if you're not sure, check out women's rights in Saudi Arabia and tell me if she would have gone anywhere. You can't drive a car without a man. So imagine here she would have been a representative in Congress. Ms. Omar complains about the lifestyle. Well, Miss Omar's net worth is over $3 million.
Wow.
Wham, Ms. Omar. Once again, you cry and whine about how life is bad in the United States, you and your squad members. But what really pissed me off this week, and it got into it, was when she decided that if she would criticize Israel, and her best buddy Rashida Tlaib, they just love to rip on Israel, to rip on the United States. And finally, Nancy Pelosi opened her mouth and said, enough is enough. Enough is enough. Because what did she do? She basically compared the U.S. and Israel to Hamas and the Taliban. She says, there's no moral equivalency. I was misquoted. It wasn't that. But BS, lady. You said it. And you were called out by your own bloody party. And in return, you and your buddy Rashida Tlaib, who's a Palestinian Muslim, by the way, who also cries that the U.S. is terrible and the foulness of Israel and blah, 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 blah. What does she say? Her colleague's criticism reaps of Islamophobia.
But that's their go-to move. That's their go-to move, David.
They can criticize, rip, destroy, humiliate, demean anyone and any time. But when they say you've crossed the line, you can't do that, oh, that's Islamophobia. I beg your pardon? You supposedly ran a campaign, supposedly, on unifying the United States. You claimed that the former president was divisive, which I will disagree because it started even before him. As Stuart pointed out, the Democratic Party hasn't exactly been your best friend when it comes up to racial policies. But you make and pretend that you are a party for the people, and you are proud to parade these type of individuals as long as it's convenient for them. As long as they have a pulpit in which to rip America, rip its allies, rip everything. If they don't get their way, you're an Islamophobe.
Mm-hmm.
You, the media, the party. Now, it wasn't Chuck Schumer, the Jewish guy from New York, who made the comment. It was the speaker, the most powerful individual in the Democratic Party, who called them out and said, enough, you've crossed the line. And yet, don't attack Ilhan Omar. Don't attack Rashida Tlaib. They have every right to do and say what they want. I'm sorry, I'm sick and tired of the double standard. You talk about being a party of the people, and you talk about the anti-racism. Well, unfortunately, I haven't heard much of it. And finally, when you finally do say something, okay, they scream Islamophobia. Isn't that beautiful?
Yep.
So the party that you guys are all like, you ripped Donald Trump for 4.5 years. President.
Well, they still are.
And the media continues to rip him as being divisive, racist, white supremacist, all these titles. Well, you know what? These bloody titles need to go to these women. Yep. Not as white supremacists, but as staunch racists, anti-American, hateful individuals who want to reap the benefits of life in the United States, but tear apart its moral fabric.
Correct.
That's convenient for them and makes them feel good. And you, as the viewers in the media, are sucking it in by believing it's that terrible.
Yep.
I will challenge you to take these ladies, and I'll call them ladies because I want to be a gentleman, and take them back to the Palestinian territories or Somalia and ask if you could tell me that the livelihood that they have there is superior to what you have in America. I doubt it. I doubt it highly. And the only people to blame are them because they're bringing their hate to America. They're bringing gang wars to America and are causing the divisiveness that the Democrats claimed in the last election they were going to eliminate, Stuart. And with that, I'm done.
Well, you know, I want a few seconds here just to give some background. So, listen, there are many people in politics who are legit, who are altruistic. They're just rare. And they're so rare, I can't come up with any names. And that's the problem with politics in the 21st century. And I think not just the United States, but in Canada,
all over the world,
in every other country.
Every other country, any democratic country,
every country is got a storm brewing that is beyond any storm that's ever brewed. And it's the most frightening thing on this earth. If you have an opposing view, most Republicans that are Republicans, right, just are silent.
Stuart, forget the term Republicans.
Yeah.
If you are a conservative thinker, if you are deviating from the so-called liberal, they call it woke, which I hate the term.
The whole concept of woke is whatever you're going to say is racist.
Yes.
It's discriminatory. Well, and to be honest with you, there is no other way to describe the woke mentality. You know, Ben Shapiro has a great expression. If I've got 29 people in a 5,000 employee company that call someone this as a woke issue, you need not 29 people who say that those 29 people are bad. You need 5,000 people to say those 29 people are ridiculous and retarded and should move on to another company or start their own. Because frankly, they create nothing. They are users. They are abusers, and they're selfish to a way in which they would never have bled for this country. This country was not created without blood. Brother versus brother is what created every country.
Hey, I don't understand that we have all these freedoms, and the freedom of speech and the freedom to say whatever you want is abused, abused. Ladies and gentlemen, we've reached our time. And we want to thank you very much again for another awesome week and awesome comment. Again, as Stuart said at the beginning, we are all over now, all over where you get your favorite podcasts. The YouTube channel is alive and ready for you to watch our rants. They're all there.
Our website.
If you're with our website or whatever, please come check us out everywhere. Check out the Rant Network. We are everywhere. Stuart, Monday.
No.
What do we want to talk about Monday?
Well, you know, I was thinking, you know, I touched on a small topic of civil rights, and, you know, we are just leaving Black History Month, which was typically a few months ago. Now it's Black Music Month. You know, I think that in itself is a racist comment. Why do we need in the modern era a month to recognize Black and a month to recognize Black music? And I want to go back to civil rights because you know what? I'm going to leave you with this. Martin Luther King would have held up a sign, "I'm a man." It never would have said, "I'm a Black man."
Well, let's put it this way, folks. Our topic on Monday is going to be, do we really need to go so far to designate and to recognize every ethnicity, race, sexual identity, sexual orientation, whatever, in a month or in some form of recognition? Or is it time to move? Is it time to move into 2021 and say we're all human? With that, we'll leave you and we'll talk to you guys on Monday. Have a great weekend, everyone.